Those pants are cool.
Velvety and soft and touchable.
I used to work at a thrift store, and I think I spent as much there as I took in.
I'm screaming, but that's relatable, yes.
Yeah.
That's why I can't work in food service no more, because I just be eating.
No,
everything.
exactly. Even I feel like it works the opposite. Like, I was taking these oral histories, and one of them was of a friend, and I was like trying to like set up the mic and like ask some basic questions, and I was like, okay, here's a good basic question. What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? And they were like, I worked at an ice cream store every summer for 6 years. The sight of ice cream fills me with sheer rage. I was like,
That's so real.
I thought this was innocent.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name's Nadia. I just wanted to start with everyone saying their name, their pronouns, and what you know about Narcan or harm reduction if you know anything. Everyone wants to start?
I guess I can start.
Yeah.
My name is Maya. I use she, her, they, them pronouns, and I am pretty well versed with Narcan. I also have done Narcan trainings. I have had to use Narcan on people before, so I feel like I have a pretty good knowledge base.
Mm-hmm.
But I am here to support. Was that all the questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nailed it.
My mother is calling.
Do your thing.
I'm Denham. I use he, they, or she pronouns.
Can I call Mom?
I have never used Narcan before.
Mm.
Don't even know what it looks like. So very happy to be here to, actually get practical information on how to use it. And harm reduction, I think I read a book on it, so that's as much as I know.
What book?
It's the pink one by Shira Hassan, Liberatory Harm Reduction.
Yeah.
Liberatory something, yeah.
I ain't heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
Shira Hassan, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
That's
Thanks.
what I read. So, just, theoretical knowledge, but
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to be in more like discussion, like you said, around it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Audrey. I use she, her pronouns. I'm aware of Narcan being used as like a life-saving thing. I just know it looks like a kind of mini rocket.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I used to know more about harm reduction. It's a like late 20th century philosophy around drug use, right?
Mm-hmm.
That has kind of expanded to, in its principles include more things. I don't know. I feel like, it's something I should know more about, and I'm glad that I get a chance to learn that here.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Well, like I said, my name's Nadia. My pronouns are they, them. Been doing harm reduction work for just over 2 years now. Some at like different nonprofits around Chicago. And then right now I'm working with SWOP and doing harm reduction stuff and programming. And harm reduction is such like a huge topic to go over. I feel like there's a lot that I can say, but I just want to focus on some of the basic concepts. Get everyone familiarized with what Narcan is, how it's used, give everyone a brief overview of like opioids, how to tell if somebody is overdosing, and how to evaluate whether or not they need Narcan, and then how to take care of somebody after administering Narcan. So I guess first we'll just get into what harm reduction is. Oh, I actually wanted to say before we get into that, we're talking about subjects that are life or death, right? It's sensitive, it's triggering. We're talking about opioid use. We're talking about overdose death. We're talking about sex work. We're talking about criminalization. We're talking about a lot of topics that people may have personal, experience with or investment in. And so, if you feel like you need to take a break from the training, feel like you need to step away from the group and take a minute, I'm going to do my best to make sure the information gets to you anyway. But I just wanted to put that out there that, these are sensitive topics, and I want to treat them with the care and respect that they deserve. I also just wanted to do a shout out to Alice Wong. This is a disabled activist, writer, incredible creator of the Disability Visibility Project, passed away today. Yeah, super heavy. And a lot of her work really informs the way that I look at harm reduction. And so I'm feeling that today. And so I just wanted to uplift her name in this space. So thank you for doing that with me. So harm reduction, it is essentially a set of practices, beliefs that are aimed around reducing negative consequences. So whenever I talk about harm reduction, first I like to just break down like what is harm, right? Harm is a physical, emotional, financial, psychological damage or injury that's done. Harm can be unintentional, harm can be intentional. It's basically unavoidable in life. If you're living a life outside, you are going to come across harm, right? Another factor that plays into harm is risk, so like a situation involving danger. Once again, like there's a lot of different things that we do that are various levels of risky. Some risks are positive risks and lead to positive outcomes. Some risks end up with negative outcomes or harm. And then the last thing that I like to talk about with harm reduction, just like breaking down the term, is stigma. So that's a set of socially reinforced negative beliefs about a person, about a group of people, about a set of behaviors. So when I'm getting people to think sort of conceptually about harm reduction, I like to ask people, how does the relationship between harm, risk, and stigma all sort of play a role in how we perceive substance use and how we perceive the people who use certain substances, right? One thing that I like to tell people when we're talking about harm reduction in reference to substance use is that there are no good or bad drugs, there's just safer ways to use them. Sometimes, you know, in like substance use recovery spaces, there's a lot of like hierarchy building when it comes to like what substances are valid and what substances are, you know, good or like safer, but it really just comes down to use at the end of the day. It's also important when we talk about harm reduction to acknowledge that even though this is a term we might hear with like nonprofits and organizations, you know, who have adopted this work ultimately comes from the strategies created by people who use drugs and multiply marginalized sex workers. Sex work is a job that carries an inherent risk, right? Sex workers got together and said, okay, so how can we make this safer, because this is something we're going to be doing anyway? How can we protect each other? How can we protect ourselves in the process of doing this work? So thinking about harm reduction, sort of not even looking at substance use, but in general, right? You know, we see examples of harm reduction every day. For example, you know, if you drive a car, driving a car is dangerous, it has inherent risk, but you wear a seatbelt. I ride a moped, I wear a helmet. That's harm reduction. You know, I want to go to the beach, I want to lay out in the sun, I don't want to get sunburned, I don't want to, you know, expose myself to the risk of skin cancer, I put on sunscreen. These are sort of everyday ways we think of harm reduction that I think we take for granted because they are socially normalized, right? They're sort of baked into our society and how we move. So, just pulling up my notes. So if we can understand how harm reduction functions on sort of a larger societal level, we can apply that to specifically, you know, stigmatized behaviors like drug use, like sex work. So some principles of harm reduction are that it's a non-judgmental approach that meets people where they're at. That's a phrase that you'll hear a lot with harm reductionists, is meeting people where they're at. So what does that actually mean? That means that when it comes to somebody's behavior, we take the approach of listening and not listening to respond, but listening to just understand the context and where people are coming from. Drug use is like a really complicated human behavior. It's something people have been doing for as long as humans have been around. And there's a lot of different reasons why people use substances, right? And so, you know, engaging with people in conversations about harm reduction means not making assumptions about where they're coming from, why they use, what they're using, and that kind of thing. It's about dignity, compassion, and respect for people who use drugs and ourselves. It's about reducing stigma and using people-first language. You know, there's really denigrating ways that people who use certain substances are referred to, and it's important to sort of reduce that stigma by humanizing people, you know, like in, you know, sex work advocacy, we talk a lot about how sex work is something you do. It's not necessarily something that you are as a whole of who you are. And And so really remembering to put people's personhood first and not reduce them to a set of behaviors. The use of evidence-based policy and practice. So, you know, just putting it out there, like abstinence-only programs don't work, right? If abstinence-only programs worked, then we wouldn't be in the opioid crisis that we're in right now. You know, telling people, oh, we'll just quit, oh, just go cold turkey. Like these strategies are not helpful. They don't actually acknowledge, you know, where a person is coming from in their lived experience. And they also don't acknowledge that that form of, like that perspective on substance use usually just drives people further into their use. It doesn't actually help people understand the relationship between, you know, what they're doing and the effect that it has on them. When we tell people, well, just quit, just be abstinent. It's not a reality for a lot of people. You know, accepting that behavioral change is incremental. I think that a lot of the time in the like recovery spaces that I've been in, there's this assumption everybody wants to be sober, right? Or that everybody should be sober, or that, you know, if you use this substance, then it needs to be used in like this very specific way to be like safe or valid. And I think that, you know, what I find really refreshing about harm reduction is that it makes space for the fact that, you know, everybody's in a different state of change when it comes to their substance use. They may not want to change anything about what they're doing, right? Or they may want to change certain contextual things in regards to their use. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, change is on like an upward escalator, just exponentially going up, right? So I think just making sure that when we're talking to people about harm reduction, that we keep their goals in mind and we don't project our own beliefs and internalized biases onto them. Quality life improvements over abstinence, which I kind of already went over, like abstinence only just doesn't really work. We really want to focus on understanding how we can improve people's quality of life. Agency, empowerment, and autonomy, all of those are really important, just like making sure that we reinforce to people that they are experts in their own experience, in their bodies, and that we can't tell people, you know, what to do, basically. I'm someone who doesn't respond well to being told what to do, and I think there's lots of people like that, right? And so, you know, harm reduction is a way for us to engage someone around a behavior with empathy and not with judgment. You know, honoring people's ability to know what's good for them. And centering the lives of perspectives and people who use drugs. So once again, you know, no policy about us without us. You know, really speaking up when there are policies being created that talk about substance use like it's an issue to be fixed without taking into account that there are people's lives at stake, right? So does anyone have any questions so far? I feel like I just did so much yapping. No questions?
I have one question.
Please.
How does harm reduction kind of take into account the ecosystem of people beyond the one person themselves, the drug user or person engaging in whatever activity may or may not be harmful?
Sorry, can you rephrase that first bit?
I guess I'm just thinking about, like, you know, what do you do in the kind of balance of, like, this is making this person's quality of life worse versus, like, you know, this person's substance use is hurting other people, and like I think I've just been struggling with, you know, personal responsibility in my own life as I've tried to figure out how to be a better person.
Okay, I think I understand your question to be
I
like.
think it's a lot of rambling that like should have been a little less half-baked, but.
No, I think I understand what you're asking. You're asking like, how does harm reduction play into, like, you don't want to tell somebody what to do, but you do want someone to acknowledge the consequences.
Yeah, kind of treating a person not as just a person, but as a part of a community.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, you know, as somebody who has personally been affected by a loved one's substance use, I think that for me, I think that there's like a difference between being like, you know, you do this thing, therefore you should be punished for it, versus like, you do this thing, and when you do this thing, this affects these people, and these people may respond in this way. You know, sort of like, I think that sometimes when people hear about harm reduction, they think it's about like eliminating any possible negative consequences for a person's actions.
Right, just being totally permissive in every way.
And I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's more so like a part of agency, a part of empowerment, and a part of autonomy is letting people know what the consequences are for their specific actions and allowing them to decide and giving them the choice to decide. I don't know if that answers your question well enough.
Yeah, no, it's giving me a lot to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah.
Can I add something to it?
Please.
I would also say that part of it is like having boundaries, right?
Yeah.
It is, it can be difficult to be in community with someone whose personal decisions does like affect you in a negative way. And harm reduction teaches us to meet people where they're at, and part of that is also acknowledging where you're at. And so gauging the ways in which you can show up and support someone, but also acknowledging in what ways those might in a way be harmful for yourself, and like being honest and transparent about that. Like, I'm not here to shame you or judge you or make you feel bad for the decisions that you're making, and I can offer support in these ways, and that is where it ends for me, because then I'm being harmed. And like, you can't show up in community if you're not taking care of yourself first and foremost. And so I think that's like an important conversation to have, because I have had that with my own substance use and friends around me, and then also having friends engaging in substance use around me and how it has affected me. And like, it's a trial and error thing, right? You don't know until you know, but once you know, then you can effectively communicate that. And so I would say that's part of it, is knowing where your limits are and how you can be supportive.
Yeah, well said. Honestly, I feel like the key word that I pulled for that was boundaries.
Yeah.
Knowing where your boundaries are, I feel like is a really important part of this work.
Absolutely.
Because I think another aspect of harm reduction that a lot of people I know struggle with is not stepping into the savior role and not being like, I can save this person, I can help this person from themselves. And it's like, we really are just giving people the support so they can help themselves. Because that is where the most powerful and long-lasting change comes from, is from within, ultimately. Yeah. Did you have any other questions? Anyone, any other questions? No? Okay, cool. Now, we went over the principles. I talked a little bit about what harm reduction isn't. So, you know, telling someone what we think is best for them. If, you know, if they're not asking you, we shouldn't be telling people what we think is best for them. Fixing people or saving people, right? We don't want to approach anybody as though they're broken or as though their behaviors are a sign of brokenness, right? We want to treat people like they are whole as themselves. And tough love is also not a harm reduction approach, right? We can't tough love people into making decisions that are ultimately healthier for themselves. Let's see, we talked a little bit about harm reduction and the origins within sex working communities. So we're gonna get into this Narcan training because I really wanna spend a lot of time talking about Narcan. I wanna answer any questions, I wanna do a demonstration and all of that because, you know, I've been Narcan trained probably like 10 or 15 times at this point, in person, online, like on various levels. And sometimes I think the finer nuances of how to identify an overdose, how to treat someone with Narcan get overlooked because of the accessibility portion. Like, we want Naloxone, which is the medical name for Narcan, to be accessible to people. We want people to feel like they can use it in a crisis emergency. But because of that, sometimes the finer details of what Narcan is gets kind of overlooked. So Narcan or Naloxone reverses the effects of a life-threatening opioid emergency. Yeah.
I feel like this is rudimentary, but could you go over a list of what opioids are?
Yes.
Yeah, can this be used for other things too? Like, you know, if a friend has an alcohol overdose, or opioids?
Great question. Yeah, it's just opioids. Opioids, so there's prescription opioids like oxycodone, hydrocodone. There's street-based opioids, so heroin. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid you've probably heard of that's made its way into the drug supply over the past 10, 15 years. I'm trying to think of what else.
Like
Percocet, Vicodin, Dilaudid, that's another one.
That's like a stronger opioid.
Okay, so they're like pain relievers.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything that's commonly known as a painkiller is an opioid, right?
So not like cocaine or.
No.
No.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
If there happens to be fentanyl, which allegedly they say sometimes it is in cocaine, and someone is overdosing, you can use Narcan if there is a chance the fentanyl is in there. But when it comes to cocaine, and this is something I wanted to bring up because I know this is Narcan training, but I would also like to speak about what a overdose on stimulants looks like, because it's not something that's spoken about, and I am a heavy stimulant user, so I would like to add that at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about Narcan, but yeah.
Stimulants like MDMA,
Yeah, cocaine,
Mhm.
Adderall, meth,
Okay.
MDMA. Ketamine would not be a stimulant. No, that would look a little bit different.
So ketamine is neither opioid nor.
No, ketamine I think
It's a
is
dissociative?
tranquilizer.
Something like that, yeah.
It's a tranquilizer.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. But not a benzo. Like that is also
No.
different. Because benzos are like Xanax,
Like a depressant.
Klonopin. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm actually so glad you're adding in your expertise, because I'm just one person. I don't know everything, so I appreciate that. And the good thing about Narcan in non-opioid use situations is that it's not going to hurt them. It's not really going to do anything. So the first thing that I wanted to go over in reference to Narcan is, how do you know when somebody needs Narcan, right? The signs and symptoms of somebody being really high on opioids can look similar to an overdose, but they're not the same.
Yeah.
So, if you were with somebody who is using opioids, or you come across somebody who is using opioids, like on the street or something, it's good to just be aware that I have on the handout the signs of overdose, but just to like verbally let you know what the signs of someone just being really high looks like. They usually have pinhole pupils, so if you look in their eyes, their pupils will be like so small you can barely see them. Muscles are very slack and droopy. They might be kind of slumped over. They might be like scratchy and itchy due to scratchy skin, slurred speech, and they'll like be out of it, but they will respond to stimuli, right? So a loud shake, a clap, a waved hand in the face, someone yelling, hey. They will respond to those things. In my mind, I think that for me is sort of the tipping point, because someone can be very high and like go into an overdose. And I think it's when they stop being responsive is when I'm like, okay, I need to check to see if this person is overdosing. So that gets into some of the more obvious signs. So like I said, if somebody's very high, they'll usually be sort of like slumped over, kind of droopy. But when they start to go into overdose, their body will sort of stiffen a little bit. They'll still be limp, but their hands might like claw up like this. So the body gets kind of stiff. The fingernails and the lips turn blue or purplish black. On dark-skinned people, this looks like gray or like really ashy all of a sudden. The skin feels cold and clammy to the touch. Like I said, like the skin tone turns sort of bluish purple, and on darker skinned people, it turns sort of gray and ashy in like the face and the neck area. The breathing gets slow and shallow, and there's usually like a choking, gurgling, or if they're just like throwing up a ton, and then in between throwing up, they're not really breathing very well. These are all pretty clear signs that a person is overdosing. So to go back a little bit, if you see somebody who's really high but not overdosing, something that you can do to help them prevent what's called compartment syndrome. It's when somebody is on opioids and they're slumped over, let's say on their arm, and that arm loses circulation. That's a medical emergency. And so a way that you can assist somebody who is super high and looks like they might pass out is to help them like sit upright, just so that they're not slumped over and like putting pressure on a part of their body for too long, because people can, you know, be really high and fall asleep for like hours, right, in the same position. And so to make sure that they don't have to, you know, seek medical attention for that specific body part, you want to make sure that they're as upright as they can be. So then going back to the overdose, so we see all of these signs in somebody and we're like, shit, what do I do? The first thing to do is to take a deep breath, right? Before anything else, before you even look at that Narcan box, I just want you to take a deep breath and assess what's happening, right? You're here, here's this person who seems as though they might be unconscious. You have the power, you have the agency to potentially save this person's life. So don't be afraid. It's a scary situation when somebody is overdosing, but just remember that you have the information that you need. And there's an acronym that, I don't love this acronym, but it's one that's used a lot called SCARE Me. And it's just an easy way of thinking through what are the different steps I need to go through when somebody is overdosing. So the very first thing you're going to do when you see some of these signs is you're going to stimulate them. First, you're going to go in with verbal stimulation. Say, hey, what's your name? See if they respond. If they don't, you want to give them like a light shake or a tap on the shoulder. If they're not responding to that, you want to make a loose fist with your hand and you want to press against the sternum, and you can do this to yourself. And you notice if you put enough pressure, it's uncomfortable. It hurts a little bit, right? And so if somebody doesn't respond to that form of stimulation, it's very likely that they need Narcan. So the next step is calling 911. So, right. Right. So calling 911, right? I cannot in good conscience tell anybody to not call first responders when someone is overdosing. Like, I can't tell you not to do that. It would be negligible of me to say not to call 911. However, I do want to acknowledge the role that like police violence has played in a lot of the communities that we're coming from, right? I want to say, like, if you're in a situation where somebody's overdosing, try to get help in the form of other bystanders, perhaps one that is more privileged that can make that call. If possible. If that's not possible, you're going to call 911 and you're going to let them know, I'm with someone who is not breathing, or I'm with someone who's unconscious. You don't want to use words like drugs. You don't want to use words like overdose. You really don't, because especially in the city of Chicago, right, we have such an intense like opioid overdose issue that, sad to say, sometimes the paramedics won't come. And they won't come, or they won't come in a timely fashion because it's so low on their priority list, you know, which I think really just goes to show like the way that, you know, city and state institutions treat people who use drugs as though, you know, an overdose is a natural outcome of that. But we know in this room that no one deserves to die from a preventable overdose, right? And so there are good Samaritan laws that protect people if you need to call 911 and the police do arrive. Technically speaking, they can't arrest you or the person who's overdosing. That being said, Good Samaritan laws don't cover outstanding warrants. They don't cover instances where, you know, let's say the person who's unconscious is like selling substances. These are honestly laws that were written to protect people who are Narcanning people, not necessarily people who need the Narcan. Yeah. So it's just something to keep in mind, and I would just encourage you to use your best discretion. If someone's overdosing, they do need medical assistance, right? They do need a first responder, somebody. And these are sort of ways that we can get that help without necessarily getting police attention. So really just avoiding using the words drug and overdose on the call are really critical. So we got S and C, then A is airway, So we want to visually check to make sure that their airway is clear, that nothing is blocking their nose, that nothing is blocking their mouth. Like I said, one of the symptoms and signs of overdose is vomiting. And so like if they threw up recently, they might have some puke in their mouth. And you just want to visually check. And if you see anything blocking the mouth, you can take 2 fingers and just swipe from left to right, right to left, up and down a little bit to clear the airway, if you can. Sometimes this isn't always possible because overdose on substances like fentanyl specifically can sometimes cause like lockjaw, and people won't be able to open their mouths all the way. So that takes us to rescue breathing. So the person's on their back, they're unconscious. You're going to tilt that person's head back and up. You're going to plug their nose, and then you're going to seal their mouth and give them 2 quick breaths. You'll know that it works because you'll see their chest rise a little bit when you do this. And then you'll want to administer a breath every 5 seconds for roughly 3 to 5 minutes. Now this is where things get kind of interesting order-wise. I would say that if you are with somebody who is using opioids and you know that they're using opioids, I would do rescue breathing first. But if you come across somebody like in the wild who might be overdosing, I would give them Narcan before you do rescue breathing. So, you know, this is in this order, so that's easy to remember. And it's generally, you know, advice for people who are using in community, right? But if you're coming across somebody and you don't know how long ago they took what they took, you know, you'll want to do Narcan and then do rescue breathing. But for the purposes of this training, you know, I'm going to teach y'all that you do rescue breathing first. If you're unable to open their mouth for whatever reason, you can also seal their mouth and breathe into their nose. It's all the same airway passages, right? So you've stimulated them, they didn't respond. You've called 911, you've let a first responder know, hey, I'm with someone who isn't breathing, they're unresponsive. You visually check their airway to make sure there's nothing blocking it. You started rescue breathing. And if they haven't started breathing on their own after that, that is when you want to administer Narcan. So here's our Narcan. Actually, I think I have some already open in my bag. Let me check.
Loosey-goosey.
A loosey-goosey Narcan. Yes, okay. So we can just pass this around. That's what Narcan looks like. I feel like I'm on like QVC or something. And this is the Narcan. It's a 4 milligram dose. It has like a nice little instructional packet on the inside on how to use. And you'll see some like warnings on the cover that say, you know, don't put this in excessive heat, don't freeze it. Each device, each one of these is single use. So you don't want to test it before you use it. So yeah, each nasal spray device contains 4 milligrams of naloxone. Let's see. So.
Can we also see the vial?
Oh yes, that's right. Thank you for reminding me. I knew I brought this for a reason. I'm not sure what situation you might be in where you might need to use intramuscular naloxone, but I want to show you what that looks like. So I can also pass this around. If you just want to pass that over. So there's 2 different kinds of forms that naloxone comes in. It comes in the nasal spray, and then it also comes in something called an intramuscular injection. So it's this little vial. And anytime you see these packets, they'll usually be in these like sun protected covers because they're sensitive to sunlight. And then you also have a needle. So an intramuscular needle is a needle that goes directly into the thickest part of a muscle. So if for whatever reason you're in a scenario where you're needing to use intramuscular naloxone, which I highly recommend doing a training specifically around this so you can practice. If you have these supplies, you can practice on an orange at home. And what you do is you pop off the orange top, you flip this over, you're gonna stick the needle head in, give it a little space, and then pull all the medicine out. And then once you have the syringe full of the medicine, you're going to go for the thickest part of the thickest muscles on a person's body. So that's going to be anywhere in the quad area, and the deltoid area as well. So anywhere that has like a really big meaty part, usually in the legs and the arms is where you're gonna, or the butt, and you're just gonna go straight down, press the plunger. But generally speaking, a lot of people are not comfortable using needles if they've never used needles for the first time. And so, that's something that more like medical professionals or people who do like harm reduction based outreach will end up doing. But just so you know what it looks like, in case you ever have to use it. So yeah, that's how you use the intramuscular Narcan. And then the nasal Narcan, it's very simple. You put your finger on the plunger. You're gonna stick the tip into somebody's nose, and then you're gonna press down, and it's gonna spray up. And how naloxone basically works is, we have all these receptors in our brain, opioid receptors. The opioids are, like if the receptors are like sitting there like a cup, the opioids, the painkillers are sitting in there, right? And what naloxone basically does, it knocks them out, replaces them. I'm trying to think, there's something else I wanted to mention about that. Narcan, once you've Narcan somebody, that's gonna stay in their body for about an hour or two. So if they try to use opioids again, it's not gonna do anything. They're not gonna get high.
Is it just one spray?
So each box comes with 2 doses. Okay. You'll generally wanna use both doses.
Can I also add something?
Please.
You should also be mindful that when you do administer Narcan to someone, the person may or may not wake up and be really pissed off. I have gotten punched in the face by someone
Same.
Narcaning them because they didn't realize they were overdosing, so they perceived it as I fucked up their high, basically. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes people can wake up and are immediately mad because Narcan is so much stronger than the actual opioid. It just knocks that shit out of your brain where it immediately takes you out of the high, under the assumption like the first and second dose works immediately. I have been in situations where a person has needed like a 3rd dose, and that's really when you need like an EMT there. But I've been punched in the face for saving someone's life. So that is something to be mindful of, that the person may or may not get violent, and it happens, right? Mm-hmm. But be mindful of that, because you might catch a right hook. It's happened to me.
Yeah, I feel like I try to word it in the nicest way possible. Like, waking up for an overdose can be confusing, disorienting, and agitating. Like, people get mad. People get really upset sometimes. Yeah, people get really upset sometimes.
Absolutely.
It's not a pleasant feeling. It's like, I've never had to be Narcaned myself, but I imagine it's something similar to like when they use those chest paddles to revive you. Like, I think it's a big shock, right? And if that person is a heavy user, that's gonna bring on precipitated withdrawal symptoms. So they might automatically start feeling dope sick, which once again, really uncomfortable state for someone to emotionally, physically, mentally be in. They may take that out on you. You just wanna let them know what's happening. Let them know that they've just received Narcan. Let them know that you have gotten into contact with, first responders. And yeah, like if you're in a situation where you're Narcanning somebody and you see them start to like rouse, give them some space. Don't like hover over them. Give them a little space. Give them a second to sort of collect themselves, and then be like, hey, my name's so and so. I just gave you Narcan, that sort of thing. So yeah, I wanted to talk about dosing because this is another sort of sticky topic, right? So each box comes with 2 doses. So that's an 8 milligram dose of naloxone total. Sometimes with synthetic opioids, they're so strong that they need another dose of Narcan. You'll be able to generally tell if someone needs another dose if you've given them one, waited 2 minutes, done your rescue breathing, giving them a second one, done your rescue breathing, and they're still not responding. You'll want to give them a 3rd dose if you have it on you. I really want to emphasize the role of timing when administering Narcan. You don't want to give someone a bunch of doses back to back. Sometimes I have heard of and seen paramedics do that because they think, well, the more I give you, the faster you'll be better. But sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes someone doesn't need that much naloxone, but giving them that much naloxone can send them right into withdrawal versus just reversing the overdose, right? So yeah, it's important to keep in mind that I think not enough Narcan trainings go over the fact that a person's disposition after being revived might not be so positive, right? We don't know why or how they ended up overdosing. In some scenarios, they may not have intended to be revived, right? So I think it's good to, make space for that nuance and acknowledge that nuance. Another thing about dosing that I wanted to mention is that sometimes you will see, there's a couple different, I forget their names, but they're like brand name, like extra strength Narcan. Do you know the name of the one spray? It starts with a K. It's like totally escaping me right now.
No.
There's a couple of different Narcan alternatives on the market right now that people in healthcare are really championing right now because it in their minds, it kind of makes their jobs easier. Cloxado, that's what it's called, Cloxado, right.
Like, Bella just said that to me on Instagram. I was
like,
trying to find
Cloxado,
it, but thank you.
Yeah.
Fast work.
So Cloxado is an 8 milligram spray, so it's a double strength dosage. You might hear this differently from other people, but I personally don't recommend carrying extra strength naloxone just because we don't actually know if a person needs that much all at once. We just don't know. It's different for everyone's bodies. It may not necessarily hurt them, but if they are a heavy opioid user, it is gonna send them right into withdrawal. And I have read some people talk about how Cloxado feels like, it's more of like a punitive sort of approach to administering naloxone. And once again, sort of treating, the opioid crisis as being this problem that can just be so easily fixed if we just give people enough Narcan and call it a day, right? It's not necessarily that simple. And so, if you see any like extra strength, like name brands of naloxone, I would just skip over that and stick with the Narcan. It's what people in communities know and understand and are comfortable using, and we really want to make sure that we, use what people who use opioids are saying they want to use to reverse their overdoses, right? We don't want to tell people what's best for them. And let's see, so we went through the whole checklist, right? Do you have a question? Yeah, please.
They would still have a pulse, right? Like they'd just be really weak. Because I'm looking through the different ways that it shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a pulse there. My bad. I was just like trying to imagine the situation, like what I would do. So
Yeah.
It's gonna be a slow or not at all even.
Yeah, it might be slow. It might be like barely there.
Yeah.
What's important to know is that opioids suppress the respiratory system. So an overdose can lead to someone being in cardiac arrest, but what's going to happen first is they stop breathing.
Right.
And then that will...
And the heart will start to pump a lot faster.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you really want to prioritize breathing. Some Narcan trainings have you do chest compressions. I don't recommend chest compressions because we're not necessarily focusing on getting the heart going. It's more about getting the breathing going again. Yeah, this is a great question though. So just to go over this little acronym again, we went over stimulation, calling 911, with discretion, clearing the airway, performing rescue breathing either through the mouth or the nose, evaluating the situation, are they breathing on their own? Okay, if not, we need to give them some Narcan, giving them that nasal spray or that injection if need be, and then evaluating again. Are they breathing? Are they conscious? Are they awake? If not, we want to keep rescue breathing, give them another dose. And if they are breathing and let's say they're like kind of out of it, still we want to move them into the recovery position. So if I could have a volunteer to help me show what the recovery position looks like, that would be great. I mean, I guess I
have
could
to,
do it, but it's better. It's a two-person situation. It's a two-person situation.
I can do this 'cause I've done it.
Okay, so just lay on your back. Is it okay if I touch you?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so you've administered naloxone to somebody, and I'm actually gonna sit on this side of you to do this. So the recovery position, this is actually a really useful thing to know in general. This is great if somebody's been revived from an overdose, if somebody has just had a seizure. Like, there's a lot of different contexts where you might use this. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're going to get on either side of the person's body. You're gonna take the arm that is closest to you, and you're gonna move that up into a right angle, right? 90-degree angle to the body. Then you're gonna take the person's other hand, you're gonna pick that up, and you're gonna put it against their cheek. Let me think. I think we go palm to palm. Is that right? Yeah, from palm to palm, and you're gonna hold the cheek there. Then you're gonna take the person's leg that's furthest from you, you're gonna pick them up over their knee, and you're gonna pull their body over to the side while you're holding the hand on the cheek still. And if you do that, if you pull the leg over and then you shift them over like that, their hand should stay on that cheek, right? And their arm should be under them like that. So this basically makes it so that the head is on its side and not like all the way back in case somebody starts like choking or, puking. This is good if you have to like leave somebody for a minute and like go get help physically, but you just want to make sure that they have their hand resting on their cheek and that they're able to lay on their side. And then you just want to make sure that this leg is pulled away from the body so that the weight is on one side. And that's pretty much that. Thank you for the demonstration.
Can you see it on the TV?
Yeah.
Cool.
That would be a bummer if we didn't.
Yeah, I know. I was going to be like,
Yeah.
I was like, we got to switch this all around.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm like a little out of it there.
You really in there.
Okay, yeah. Okay, cool. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure for the...
So yeah, that's a recovery position. That
Yeah.
is position you'll want to move somebody in if they are, revived from Narcan but still kind of out of it. Or if you have to like get up and leave them for whatever reason. And honestly, that's about it. There's pretty much not a whole lot else to it outside of, physically being in that scenario. I think that one of the things that's difficult about this training is that it's not a like bystander intervention specific training, right? But I do think that being Narcan trained is a really good step to feeling empowered to intervene in scenarios where you feel like you want to help, but you're not really sure what's going on. Here's a little toolkit to be able to do that. And if you come across somebody who you think is overdosing, another thing that I want to mention is that you really want to see if they have any friends around or anyone who knows them, because ultimately those people are going to be able to best take care of them better than you, a stranger, could. Ask them if they have Narcan. If they don't, give them some. If they do, ask them, are you sure you know how to use it? They know how to use it. Make sure that person has people if you yourself, to make sure they're not alone, basically. Yeah, does anyone have any other questions or anything to clarify?
Not about Narcan, but earlier I saw, when you had harm, risk, and stigma, and I'm realizing my own stigma because as I'm like imagining a scenario, I keep imagining someone who's helpless and realizing that that's not necessarily true as to like who would be using opioids. So
Right.
going back to that conversation around like harm, risk, and stigma, right? Like I feel like I'm not partying as much anymore, so I don't feel like I'm going to be in this situation, but I do, walk downtown for school and stuff. So I see people who are unconscious in the downtown streets of Chicago all the time. And I'm noticing that is the position that I'm like, oh, that's maybe when I would use it, but just wanted to name that like I'm noticing this stigma that's coming up.
Yeah, and thank you for naming that, because I think that's something that really goes like overlooked.
Yeah.
That like, people might think, when they think of an opioid overdose, they think of the scenario that you described,
Yeah.
but they may not think of an elder in their community who is
Yeah.
prescribed pain medication,
Right.
but doesn't have anyone to make sure they take it regularly, so they accidentally take too much. You know, that stuff happens. So, yeah, thank you for naming that. Yeah, anybody else, please?
So as like awesome as it is to save a life, knowing that I have to give mouth to mouth to someone who may or may not have thrown up is kind of not the ideal for me.
Sure.
How do I get over the like just grossness of bodies?
That's a great question. It's one I've yet to fully answer. I mean, for me, I think that,
Like they're great, but they're weird.
They have I forgot what it's called, but there is like a.
they make like shields. Yeah.
They use them
Mouth
in like
thing.
CPR classes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We used to. It's somewhere in my house because I have all of our fucking.
I also have them somewhere in my house.
In my house. I should have brought it now, thinking about it. But there is a thing that exists where it's like a piece of plastic that has like a little drop down tube, and you just plop that in their mouth, and then you can do mouth to mouth without making like
Physical contact, yeah.
Because it talks about making suction. I'm like, that would be
Yeah.
pretty up in there.
They exist. I don't know the name of them, but it is something that exists, and they are commonly used in CPR trainings for sure. But it is something that can be extended to like an overdose scenario, and also that's just like further harm reduction because someone could have like visible sores on their mouth or something like that, and that's something you also want to be mindful of. Like, it's probably not the best thing to put your mouth on someone's mouth if they have visible sores.
Right.
But if you cannot get access to one of those, I say like use a dental dam if you are familiar with what that is.
Very.
Right? Poke a little hole in a dental dam if you have access to that, and that's also something you could use. It's just like a barrier. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. If you absolutely don't have any barriers, I would recommend mouth to nose because at least it's a little less like mucous membrane to mucous membrane. It's not ideal, but yeah, if you don't have a barrier, I would suggest doing the mouth to nose. Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe just if you have Narcan, like stick a little CPR thing onto it so you
Right.
have it all the time already.
Exactly.
If you're gonna use Narcan, you're gonna have to do that first, so you might as well just have that protected area.
Carry it in your kit.
Yes. I highly recommend a little kit. I like to carry around Narcan, a couple testing strips, you know. I think I have them somewhere. I don't think I brought enough testing strips for everybody, but
Again, something I could have brought, but I
it's
didn't
like
think about it.
in my various. Did I bring one? Did I bring one? I did. Wait, did I? Let me look. Let me look.
Always take Plan B, but one thing about me, you need some. You shouldn't have to I will take Plan B, yes. Absolutely. Y'all know me.
I thought I had some test strips on me, but I don't. But the last thing that I wanted to mention is that there's such a rich harm reduction history in Chicago. Like, this is kind of the birthplace in a lot of ways of harm reduction, like the modern movement of harm reduction. And so Chicago Recovery Alliance, shout out to them. If you ever need supplies, you can reach out to them. Less ideal, but if you need supplies, you can reach out to Chicago Department of Public Health. You know, they have various forums where you as an individual can go on there, put in your information, they'll deliver it to you for free. You can get Narcan at any Chicago public library in the city. There's a couple of Narcan vending machines. I think there's one in Rogers Park. I think there's one on the south side.
One on like 79th at the train station.
79th? Yeah.
I think Dorothy's downstairs has some.
Yeah,
'cause they
Dorothy
have, like,
does.
Plan B and all that.
Is it a person or a place?
No, it's
It's a place.
It's a queer bar.
That's a clear bar. I couldn't even been there. That's crazy.
Do you need somebody to take you to Dorothy's?
I trusted a doll.
God.
Bartender.
That's on harm reduction. Go to the bar with your friend. That's harm reduction.
I'm actually turning loose on the streets now.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being such a patient, wonderful audience. Thank you for being here. Appreciate y'all.
I was just gonna add something
please.
So when it comes to stimulants and
Oh, yeah.
overdosing, it's not commonly called like overdose. It's more often referred to as overamping. And what happens, because stimulants is a central nervous system depressant, when you're engaging in like cocaine usage, or you're taking Adderall, or you're smoking meth, or you're doing, God forbid, all three of those things together, which is really dangerous, and people have done it, myself included. What happens is you will first notice that a person gets really hot. They get really, really hot, like to the touch. You touch them and they're really warm. They start sweating, and the first thing you want to do is move them to like a cool, dark room, and then you will want to put like either ice or a cold towel on the back of their neck, back of the legs, under the armpits, maybe the feet. That helps bring down the body temperature. Because what happens with stimulants is you are at risk of going into cardiac arrest. Because you're so hot, your body is trying to cool you down, so your heart is pumping faster. And there is a very fine line between this person is overamping and we need to just like cool them down and get them to relax, and like this person is about to have a heart attack. And that is something you have to figure out in real time. More often than not, what happens when someone starts overamping is it triggers a panic attack, which also gives you the same physical sensations of being hot, your heart pounding out your chest. And that's why it's important to move them to a cool, dark room, do things to bring down their body temperature, get them to engage in like deep breathing, have them do grounding exercises, talk about their happy place, ask them what their name is, what's your favorite color, can you tell me about a favorite memory of yours. If they are unable to talk because they are too anxious, then you can speak to them. I recommend speaking slowly and in a soft tone. Gentle rubs on the back also helps like calm people down. I mean, this happens to me all the time. Sometimes I get too hot and then I have a panic attack and I start overamping. I've had that happen with friends. And so just something to be mindful of, right? Like, you are at risk of going into cardiac arrest, and that is something to be mindful of. But more often than not, just removing the person from the environment, bringing down their body temperature, and just trying to get them to like relax often helps. If it is really severe, obviously call for help. Whenever you call the police, you never tell them anything about drugs, like Nadia said. It's always, my friend is unconscious, my friend's not breathing, something like that. My friend's having a severe panic attack. And then they will dispatch the EMTs and the paramedics, and the cops should not show up. That's a hard should. But there are things that you can take, like, I keep a bunch on me, but there's a thing called clonidine, which is actually a prescribed medication for like heart-related things. But I am prescribed it for my anxiety, and all it does is removes the physical sensations of having a panic attack. So if you have access to clonidine, or you know somebody that has it, and someone is panicking, it is safe to give them the clonidine, even though they have been using stimulants, and that will take away the physical sensations of them panicking. It will also make them drowsy, and they'll probably fall asleep, which
is good.
Good, yes, because then they'll calm their ass down.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all I wanted to say, because I do a lot of overdose prevention trainings, but it's always about Narcan and opioids. And I am a stimulant user, and so I always like to throw that in there, because not everybody be doing drugs, but people be doing drugs, and it's important to know what drugs people are doing and how to best help. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you for adding that, because I feel like I mostly know a lot about downers. Uppers, not so much. So that's good to know.
I wondered if we're at the end, can we do the rescue thing again in shot, or more in frame?
Yeah, you want to do it again?
Yeah, just for like so people can go back and watch it.
Yeah.
It was a little out of frame.
Sure.
So, you know.
Get in there.
I'll get in there.
Come back. We'll do it again.
So I'm gonna move. Don't worry.
You remove the stuff? Okay.
I don't mean to go right on this like wood.
What are your pronouns?
Who, me?
Yes.
Ian.
While he's doing that, I was just thinking about how are we gonna make these medications available to the community without having to rely on prescriptions and like the medical system because a chemist, we need labs.
We need a chemist.
We need a chemist.
We need somebody to make our stuff for us.
I mean, what I do, because like with the clonidine specifically, since I get prescribed that and I use it only when I really, really need to for my panic attacks, I will give them to people. Like if we hang out and we're doing cocaine
Yeah.
Community pharmacy.
like
Yeah, I would say just ask. Asking.
Of people just sharing their. I just gave you all of my Zoloft. I had
I'm like,
90
I'm free to
pills
live,
of
I don't
Zoloft that I do not take, and I just gave it to you. And that's the thing. Like my doctor, he gonna keep giving me that shit, and
Right.
I'm not taking it. I probably
Right.
should be, but that's different. But like, if you can and you have access to medication that you know you're not taking, share the wealth. Same thing. I get prescribed painkillers for my sickle cell. I hate fucking opioids.
Mm-hmm.
If I know somebody is in chronic pain and they need it, I'm gonna give it to you. That's how we keep each other alive. It's the underground movement of sharing the wealth. And so that's really it, right? Like if you get the meds and you're not taking them, share them with people. Find other people that are doing the same. If you have to pay for it, do that, right? But whatever will help keep someone alive if they choose that route.
Right.
They want to be here and you can help them stay here, then do that. But yes, please.
Yeah.
With the rescue thing. My bad.
I'm on the ground.
Recovery position. So I just administered Narcan. Cam's breathing, but still kind of out of it. So just to make sure that he's in a safe position if I have to go somewhere else, you're gonna take the arm that's closest to you on their side of their body, put it in a right angle, 90-degree angle like that. You're going to take the hand that is furthest from you and go palm to palm, right? Like that. And then you're gonna press it to their cheek, like that. You're gonna take the leg even, that's furthest from you, and you're gonna pick it up under the knee, and then while keeping your hand on their cheek, you're gonna pull that leg closer to you, right? And then you can just sort of gently pull their upper body over, make sure that hand is still underneath the cheek. It can either be pressing against the ground or palm up like that. And just make sure that they're on their side, that their weight is distributed on their side. And then if I need to go call and get help or what have you, I can go and do that and make sure he doesn't puke while I'm away. Or at least he doesn't choke on his puke if I go away. Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadia.
Thank you. Thank you for the insight. Thank you all for listening. If you would like a Narcan, please take one.
Yes,
Take as many as you'd like,
I
honestly.
have 50,000 of these in my house. Please take this.
Literally have 50,000 of these in my apartment. Like,